Good afternoon. Today is Sunday, November 27th. I trust you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family and friends. And now today we're getting ready to get back at it. So I want to go over what we're doing in week 6. I'm going to start by talking about the discussion board entry. It reads this way: describe your planning process and include mention of all key players who have any influence over decisions, methods, considerations, and implementation of curriculum at your school site and in your classroom. In addition to including support from Chapter 8, you need to do some outside research on the topic of stakeholders and their role in and influence on curriculum design and implementation. Read and reference an article of choice that is in some way linked to this topic, and as always, include in-text citations and full source references. In Chapter 8 of your textbook, it talks about implementation as a change process. And I want you to think about this in terms of the change you're bringing to your own instruction through this design unit, understanding by design backwards design. So think about how you have changed and how implementing this is going to impact your students and possibly your work with your colleagues. And think secondly about how this does affect a broader community of stakeholders, perhaps your professional learning community at your site or your department, whichever. How this is going to impact that, and how is change affecting those stakeholders. By stakeholders, we're talking about parents, colleagues, students, and when we think about your students, think about all your students, your special ed students, your students that are advanced learners, your EL learners. It includes also administrators, community members. Your textbook on pages 259 to 263 goes into an even more detailed list of stakeholders, so you can get some information there as well. Also, referring back to Chapter 8 on page 244, it's sort of towards the beginning of the chapter, and it talks about 5 guidelines that should be followed for successful implementation. So as you think about this, think not only of this unit. Many of you are probably implementing new language arts series, Common Core. There's a new series in math for Common Core. The NGSS science standards are out, and you will be implementing all of these things, many of you, especially if you're elementary, but you will be implementing all of these changes as a result of the Common Core. So how is that going to be carried out within your classroom with your students? How is it going to be carried out within your grade level or departments? And how is it being carried out across your school and district? So kind of think about that in those terms. All right, I want to talk about assignment 6. This is the signature assignment that, of course, is uploaded onto Blackboard. There is a rubric for this assignment under week 6. In the directions themselves, it gives you a link to the rubric. So I want you to make sure that you download that or have some kind of a copy, digital or hard copy, of that rubric as you're working on this. I'm going to go over each of the components, and I'm going to give you some directions that are a little different than what are listed because I like the way I want you to set it up better. I think it makes more sense. If you haven't already begun with the use of a template, you can download one online. Some of you have already put your stage 1 questions into the template form. Some of you submitted your entire stage 1 with your enduring understandings and your objectives and your standards already. So however you have done that, initially you will need to put your work now into a template. My preference is the last one that's offered on that link, the Word document. That document does not format well if you do it in Google Docs, but it's the cleanest one, and it's right out of the Understanding by Design manual. In the directions, it says to use a new template for each lesson. I would really prefer that you do not do that. When you look at the template, it has stage 3. Those are your learning opportunities. And what I really want you to do is notate each of the 5 lessons you're being asked to do this week in that stage 3. So you'll have lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4, lesson 5. And I would keep them as lessons. They don't necessarily have to be days. A lesson can cover more than one period or one day's time. But if you just label them as lessons and include them all under stage 3, that's a much cleaner way for me to grade it and for you to think about these lessons in the context of your entire unit. I mentioned this in the last video I made, but it's been a couple of weeks, so I'll repeat it. You do not create new essential questions for each lesson. Your essential questions are overarching throughout the entire unit. You do not have to restate those. If you put everything onto one template, your essential questions and enduring understandings are stated in stage 1, and everything that you are teaching is going to refer back to those essential questions and enduring understandings. So those are your overarching ideas and concepts. They remain the same. What you need to make sure is that what you're teaching in stage 3, in your 5 lessons, is going to enable your students to be successful in stage 2, the assessment piece, that they'll be able to meet those assessments. And then those stage 2 assessments will ensure that your students are able to answer the essential questions and come to that overarching understanding. All right, so I hope that's clear. If there's any questions, again, email me or give me a call. All right, so it talks about 5 complete lesson plans. You are submitting the actual unit plan, lessons, and materials. At the end of this unit, you are doing a 1-page plan to evaluate the effectiveness of your unit as a personal reflection, and should provide some evidence of how backwards design practices affect and inform your unit design and assessment practices. Some of you have already been talking about this in some of your discussion board entries that I've read, so refer back to some of the things that you've already established. Use credible literature to support your ideas and cite or reference according to APA. Think about the pieces that you've already had to read and look at and use those same articles. Let's see. Yes, the articles that you downloaded in connection to the library orientation. Okay. Consider, when you're constructing these lessons, consider differentiation and include extensions and adaptations to make sure that these are clearly indicated by italicizing to place emphasis, and so that the differentiation methods can be clearly located by me as I'm reading through your lesson. So again, you're thinking about all the stakeholders in your room. Between each lesson, include any supplemental materials, assignments, activities for that lesson before going on to the next lesson. Some students in the past have uploaded all those sample pages. That is not really necessary for me. You can if you want to keep this as a intact unit, but if you simply list what those supplemental materials are and what those additional assignments or activities are, that's fine. You can even include them in the body of the lesson as you work through that. Actually, all the activities should be included within the lesson process. And I think it's easiest to bullet your activities and your lessons. Remember that this is instruction. This is what you're teaching. So don't just give a list of what students are going to do. Make sure that you address what you, as the teacher, is teaching your students. Okay. Also, you are submitting assessment models as part of the week 8 assessment plan. So you will need to indicate your assessment measures now in 2 places. If you give me just a general outline of what your performance task will be at the end, and then a formative assessment between each lessons. What did you do at the end of the lesson or during the lesson to indicate whether or not your students are understanding your lesson, checking for understanding. Indicate that within the lesson plan or at the end of the lesson plan. And I'm going to talk in a few minutes a little bit more about that assessment piece. You're also asked to cite all sources within the body of the lesson plan. So that can be at the end of your lesson plan. Where did you get this information? What did you use for this? And add full APA formatted reference to a reference page. So at the end of your entire template, after stage 3, you're going to have attached a separate reference page. All right, so let's talk briefly about the rubric. Again, this is under week 6, the assignment, and within the directions, which are a little bit different than what I'm telling you, you'll find a link to this rubric. This assignment is worth 60 points. You are asked, first of all, to have 5 complete UBD lessons, the template utilized effectively, and all components aligned. In other words, every lesson you teach has to be aligned to your essential questions, and they have to be aligned to your final performance task. So they're not just random lessons based on a loose topic, they're all closely aligned. You will have a completed stage 1. You will have a kind of a skeletal stage 2, because actually stage 2 should be created prior to this, but the way this class is currently set up, that's not the way it is. So under stage 2, the assessment evidence, at this point in time, you're simply going to put in what your performance test is going to be, and then within your lesson plans, you're going to have that formative assessment as ongoing. You can also indicate that on stage 2 under other assessment, what that formative assessment is. Stage 3 is your learning plan, and that's what you're really working on and focusing on this week. It's asking you to also make sure that you have some technology integration and evidence of differentiation. If you want to italicize that, highlight it, bold it, so it's easy for me to see, that would make grading a lot easier. And then at the end, as I said earlier, you're going to have a plan to evaluate the effectiveness of the design. So look carefully at that rubric. It's pretty much spread across 10 points in each area, and I left off one area. That's your APA, your writing style, your language mechanics organization. So that's worth 5 points, and the technology and differentiation is worth 5 points. All the rest of these sections are worth 10 points. Okay, I hope I've been clear enough for you to understand this. This is going to be your most detailed assignment to date for this course. So lay it out, think differently about your instruction, challenge yourself as you're implementing this to think differently about how you're teaching, and don't just try and make it the same thing that you have done in the past, but make it fit to this model of backwards design. Okay, have a great week. As always, I'm here for you if you have questions or comments. And good luck with your assignment. I look forward to reading them next week.